The Geek Speak Show Volume 2 is produced and distributed by 22 Creations Multimedia LLC.
Well, look at you. You found one of the longest-running geek culture talk shows. This is the Geek Speak Show, Volume 2, featuring nerdy Navajo news with Sean Clenn, and now the Geek Speak Show Book Club. Here's the host of the Geek Speak Show, Henry San Miguel.
Hello, true believers. Here I am. Welcome back to another episode, hopefully exciting, of the Geek Speak Show. As I was getting this episode ready, actually, a couple days ago and to this morning, it made me reflect on something that I think has been obvious to a lot of us, or maybe not, maybe it's me. In a moment, you're about to hear from young writers and artists and their new comic book and film characters. Now, these characters are not based on Spidey or on Batman or any of the major superheroes that we all know and love. Well, one of them kind of is, just with a non-human twist. Yeah, it's a good way to put it. You'll see what I mean in a minute. But anyway, what today's guest made me realize, confirm is the better word for it. What they confirmed is we, America especially, we're living through a very transformative age right now. And I'm not talking about more than meets the eye. I'm not talking about robots in disguise. That's not what I mean by transformative. I mean, we, as an American society, we are definitely changing. It was already happening back when, I think it was 2020, 21, when I first met Sean Clenn and his brother. At the time, they used to tell me that they wanted to turn their Navajo stories of creation into stories for all audiences. And I told them it's going to work. They would tell me the stories, and I would listen, and I said, you know what? This is going to work, because even if you're not Navajo, the lessons that these stories teach, they're human lessons, not strictly for Navajo or indigenous people. So it's the same with stories from other cultures, not just Navajo, but from other cultures, other parts of the world, or not even other cultures, just a different way to view society, whether it be American or just society in general. Those stories, they apply to everybody. The lessons they teach you at the end of the day, they apply to everyone, no matter where you're from. So you're about to hear those types of stories from today's guests. And before we get to that, I want to challenge you, the Geek Speak audience, to do something before they come on. And I'm challenging you, the Geek Speak audience, specifically because I know a lot of you. The last couple of years, I know I've gotten a lot of new listeners, and I haven't really met too many of you. In fact, now that I think of it, it's kind of surprising. Last week, I didn't meet any of you at San Diego. Usually that's where I meet you guys. But I know, I guess the new generation of listeners, I guess you're a little bit more shy. And that's fine. That's okay. You don't need to come say hi to me. But I'm saying, because I know most of the longtime listeners, I'm confident in saying that if any audience can rise to this challenge I'm about to issue, it's you guys. That challenge is this. When the guests come on, they start telling you about their stories, listen with an unbiased ear. Now, what the heck does that mean? Well, there are a lot of people today whose ears perk up as soon as they hear other cultures. Not because they're interested in other cultures, but because for them, it's, how do I put it? Anything but America. Now, I'm not going to get into a political or psychological discussion on this, but I'll just say I've always said that's the definition of a hypocrite, because you don't know about the cultures in your own country. Yes, cultures, Not cultures that are brought here from other countries, people that come from other countries. I'm talking about in America. And we have a few. There's West Coast culture, East Coast culture, Midwest culture, Southern culture. Yes, it's one country, but we're different. We really are. So it makes us great. I know about this because I lived in this, except for Southern. I've never lived in the South, but I grew up in East Coast. I've lived most of my life in West Coast. I've also lived in Midwest, so I know those cultures. I know what it's like. You can feel it when you live there. Not visiting, you might see it, but living there, yeah, you're definitely going to live it and become a part of it. So if you don't understand that or don't care to understand that, that's a hypocrite because you don't understand your own culture and your own country, but you're so quick to embrace or praise others because they're not seen, underrepresented. And if that sounds like a sheep, well, yeah, figure it out. So again, listen with an unbiased ear to today's guests. Yes, their stories are about heroes and supernatural beings from other cultures, other countries, but listen to the lessons that those stories are teaching. Because I'm willing to bet those stories, those lessons, they apply to you and you over there. And yeah, even me. Even if we're not from that part of the world. Hopefully, today is going to be the first steps for some of you to be able to see a story from both sides, not just from your side. There's already too much of that going on. Let's try something new, which, if you think about it, really isn't that new. We just forget how to look at stories from both sides instead of just from our side.
The Geek Speak Show, Volume 2 presents Nerdy Navajo News with Sean Clem.
Hoñat! Hey everybody, my name is Sean Clem and here's what's happening in geek culture. This week's update is going to be very special because I am doing this update at 12:23 a.m. and I have to try to be a little bit quieter, so I'll give you the Navajo Nerdy News in a quieter tone. Oh, attention Batman fans, especially Tim Burton Batman fans. The Michael Keaton Batman and Batman Returns movies will be heading back to the big screen for one night only on August 25th. Oh my gosh, that's so amazing. This will be at over 160 AMC theaters across the US. Now, both movies will be shown in a remastered all-out Dolby Cinema experience. Now that means that Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos audio remix. What that means is more vivid colors, deeper blacks, sharper contrast, and a surround sound that completely immerses you in the world of Tim Burton's Gotham. Oh, see, it sounds really good. Really, really interesting, that one. Even more than it did back in 1989. So be there in the AMC theater August 25th if you want to dance with the devil in the pale moonlight in Dolby Atmos. Oh. On to the next story. Mudd's cartoonist Patrick McDonald is teaming up with the Animal Care Centers of New York City, Muddy Paws Rescue, and Isabel Klee to launch an Adopt Love campaign to raise awareness for pet adoption and fostering during the month of August. Go visit Mudds.com all month for a giving campaign, new art from Patrick McDonald, and more. Oh, on to the next story here. Hey, wake up now. Hey, wake up. We're doing Navajo Nerdy News here. Hey, make sure you listen. Turn up the volume if you can't hear me. Artist Butcher Billy has signed up to be the official cover artist for the upcoming Black Mirror graphic novels from the indie publisher Twisted Comics. The first graphic novel adaptation will be the USS Callister. You can back the Kickstarter up now by going Kickstarter.com and searching for Black Mirror USS Callister. Oh. And now for the last story here, finally for today. A Summerween story for you. See that? October is coming. I gotta call it Summerween. Yes. A reminder, really. Tickets are on sale now for Universal Horror Unleashed. It'll be opening August 14th in Las Vegas, Arena 15 Entertainment Hub, featuring the Universal Monsters, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Exorcist Believer, and Scarecrow the Reaper. Tickets will sell for $69 to go through the haunts one time, and $99 for unlimited access. Man, you just really need the horror, you need to go through it multiple times and be traumatized. Maybe you get to know the actor who's actually being the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Oh. Visit UniversalHorrorUnleashed.com for tickets. My name is Sean Clem, and I hope you enjoyed this Navajo Nerdy News Update. Hope you have a great week, and I'll see you in the next one. I got it.
That was Nerdy Navajo News with Sean Clenn, exclusively on the Geek Speak Show, Volume 2.
So you think it's easy speaking geek? Here's your chance to put your, mouth where your mouth is. Join the Geek Speak Show as the new co-host. That means we'll hear you on every episode, including the issues of the day, Halloween episodes, and Geek Speak treats. You'll be able to attend movie premieres and other events that the show covers. Yes, that means you'll be going to San Diego Comic-Con without having to worry about badges selling out. This is open to anyone who'd like to join Henry on the weekly episodes and on camera at various events. But there will be tryouts, so don't think you'll be the co-host just because you get in touch with us. How do you get in touch? That's easy. Send an email to geek.speak@gmx.com. Put new co-host in the subject line. We hope to have a new co-host in place before fall, so send an email to geek.speak@gmx.com or tell someone you know who would be a perfect co-host on the Geek Speak Show.
Attention fans of horror and paranormal media, I invite you to pick up and read a copy of Eerie Expeditions magazine. You won't find interviews with paranormal TV celebrities or a retelling of the same old, "this place has been haunted for years" type of stories. Eerie Expeditions magazine is filled with articles about real people dealing with real hauntings. Founded and edited by author C.L. Thomas, Eerie Expeditions is your start to a supernatural frontier. Visit EerieExpeditionsMagazine.com to get a single issue or a yearly subscription.
Okay, let's get back to more of the Geek Speak Show, Volume 2. Here's Henry San Miguel.
A couple of weeks ago in San Diego, I stopped at the Diwata Comics booth and met Mark Nazal. Mark is a multicultural writer, director, and a multi-nominated Primetime Emmy Award-winning visual effects artist and supervisor who's best known for his work on Fox's hit TV show Gotham. Mark's also supervised visual effects for many other shows that we watch and I talk about here on the show, like Westworld, Lucifer, The Walking Dead, Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D, Marvel's Runaways, and a whole lot more. He's also the founder and the chief creative officer at Diwata Comics, and he joins me today on the Geek Speak Show. Welcome, Mark. How are you?
Hey there, Henry. I am doing great. How about yourself?
Doing fantastic. So before we get into everything you're doing now, let's go back a little bit and find out about your geek origins, if you will. Who or what introduced you to geek culture?
You know, that's funny. So I didn't grow up in this country. I actually grew up in a place called Abu Dhabi, and this is in the United Arab Emirates.
Mm-hmm.
And over there, geek culture was very different in that, you know, the things that we gravitated to, we really didn't have the opportunity to follow up on. Like, we gravitated to anything that was in English, first and foremost, because it was an Arabic country. But thankfully, the bookstores there did have comic books. So I'd really say the comic books and eventually the shows that were on at random times of the day were how I got introduced to geek culture, but that also explains why my perception of geek culture is a little bit different.
What was it? American comic books or Middle Eastern comic books?
Yeah. They definitely had American comic books. So I would say Spider-Man, X-Men, a little bit of Superman. Funny enough, when I was a kid, I actually thought Wolverine's name was X-Man. That made no sense. But yeah.
Well, I mean, you're close. He was Whipping X before all that, so you were close. But cool. I mean, that's a cool story. So when did you know that you wanted to help bring these stories to life as a visual artist?
You know, I was 16, and it's funny. People ask me how I got started in working in film and TV, and the answer is, I guess I was always doing it. I taught myself at 16, and one of the ways that I taught myself was I basically replicated the work of the, you know, what do you call that? Brain. We were basically doing I was replicating the things that I saw on TV, whether that was Smallville, that was Charmed, or things like that. So it was about like looking at the shows, seeing, the fantastical things that the different characters did and kind of figuring out the software to do it. For me, it wasn't as much as somebody taught me. It was more of like I saw something and I wanted to replicate it. And that's how it really began. Like I would replicate like the effects from the original X-Men films in my living room. So my living room and my bedroom were like where my brother, my sister, and guests at our house would do things like optic beams, teleportation, turning into Nightcrawler, Phoenix. You name it. It's
Yeah.
like we basically just did it in my little bedroom.
Yeah. Then no, I was smiling when you were saying that because brain for both of us. I was trying to jump in, but I'm barely on my second cup of coffee. So yes, it's in the morning as we're recording this. So yeah, brain not quite there yet. So, but I knew what you meant. I just wasn't able to say it either. So sorry about that. So
That's all right.
now that you know how the shows are made, now that you're making these things come to life, has that, how do I put it, diminished your enthusiasm or the way you watch the shows today or movies today?
Not really. I think if anything, it changed a lot of how I wanted to see things. One of the biggest differences is obviously, as you know, we have our own brand called Diwata Comics, and beyond Diwata Comics, we also do live action adaptations of the projects that we build from the comic book world. That's because we have the capability to do so. I mean, I am still a fan of the same things that I'm a fan of. I think it just expanded in a sense that I wanted to see more of us in those stories.
Yeah, I get that. So that perfect segue is, tell me about Diwata Comics. How did that come about?
Yeah, so obviously, as you've eloquently mentioned, I have worked on some of the biggest franchises out there. I've worked on things like Gotham, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D, Person Adventures, Lucifer, and I think I can go on a recitation at this point. But what was very clear to me was that while those shows are great and those were fantastic properties, we felt kind of absent, and we didn't really have, or didn't really feel like we have as much stake in the narrative because we weren't a part of the narrative. And so we created Diwata Comics as a way for us to become a part of the narrative and being able to tell our own stories, but also bring the experience that I've had on those shows into something that we create with characters that look and sound like us. When I say look and sound like us, coming from a Filipino-American perspective.
Yeah, which, in fact, explain what Diwata Comics is. Not just a cool name. Explain what the name actually means.
Yeah, so Diwata is literally, I guess in Philippine indigenous culture, they're gods and goddesses. But if you Google them, there's a little bit of a confusion because when the Spanish came, they wanted Christianity to be the base religion. So they designated the Diwatas to be more of like fairies and wood nymphs. But really, when you look at the history, they were the gods and goddesses of Philippine mythology, kind of like in the same way that the Greek gods and goddesses were. So for our series, for our purposes, we're bringing them back to their godhood. So Diwatas are Philippine gods. And comics, and the way that we spell them is how it's spelled in the Philippines, because we wanted to bring visibility to the fact that there is a fantastic comic subculture over there, kind of like Japanese anime and manga. And we wanted to bring visibility to that despite the fact that we are Filipino-American.
Yes, and at Comic-Con, you told me about Carmina, and I think you mentioned the new icons also, but paid to make you repeat yourself, but can you share those stories with the Geek Speak audience?
Yeah, of course. So let's start with the character that kind of opened the doors for us and that made us start this whole universe. So Carmina is a young woman from a small town in New Mexico who finds out that her mother is a goddess from Philippine mythology. But the caveat of Carmina, or at least her original series, is that she didn't exactly grow up in the best way possible. Like she goes through a lot of traumatic experiences, which is actually how her power activates. And it begs the question, if you've been pushed down all your life and you find out you have unparalleled power, what would you do? So really, from a story perspective, it's a story that's been told in different ways. But here we're adding a Philippine mythology twist in that there's kind of like an American gods feel to it, where there's this young woman in a small town who finds out that once again, her power and her lineage comes from a heritage she barely even knows about from the other side of the world, which really just kind of like underscores, just as you and I are here, the stories of our ancestors and our culture can cross boundaries and oceans to make it where we live in the places that we call home.
Yeah, have you? I was thinking about this as you were saying that. Have you noticed? Because we've talked about different stories from different cultures on the Geek Speak show over the years. Have you noticed that in the Philippine culture, in the Philippines with the Filipinos, are they as receptive as other cultures are to their stories rather than just because most people to here today, they get Americanized. They just love Spider-Man and all the the stuff that you've worked on. How open would you think they will be for these kind of stories?
I would actually say very. I don't think we'd still be here today if we didn't have such an amazing reception from the community. Whether that's California, Texas, or Atlanta. So far, those are the states that we've been able to be fortunate enough to have exhibited our books so far. There's really been this underlying theme of, the things that we know and love are great, but we also want to see new things. We want to see new stories. I mean, I think really as a comic book fan, that's how I felt. Like, I still went to the comic book store, picked up my Wonder Girl, my Wonder Woman, my X-Men, but I always end up at the back of the store as well because I want to see what new things are on the horizon. I want to see new stories. So we can love both. We can love the things that we've grown up to love, but we also want to see material that A, is fresh, but also B, represents us to some degree.
I have a spin-off show this year that I call The Issues of the Day where we talk about things like that. One of the big things that has come up is original stories. And we've talked about, like, he's not here today, but my co-host, Sean Clenn, he's from the Navajo Nation, and they talk about their stories of creation and how they'd like to adapt those for everybody, really. But the thing is, we've seen at WonderCon and at Comic-Con, past Comic-Cons, we have talked to creators, filmmakers from other countries. Then their movie comes out and nobody shows up. So we're trying to figure out, why is it everybody wants original stories, but then when they do get it, they don't show up?
Well, the question is, how are you presenting it? That's the first question. It's like, it always comes down to relatability and what looks cool. So in my mind, when I look at Carmina, I don't look at her as a Filipino story. In fact, I don't look at her as a cultural story at all. I look at it as a supernatural story with, quite frankly, some revenge elements. But at the core of it, when we put out our series, the way that I want to look at the series that we create is, we're not asking for people's permission as a diversity. Oh, this is diversity, so therefore you have to support it. We're creating these characters because A, we ourselves think it looks cool. We like to see new material that kind of like reminds us of the things that we like and love. So you have to kind of balance that. I don't think just by creating something for the sake of diversity is going to bring audiences in. You have to be able to lure them to the things that they can relate to and the things that they love. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. If Sean Clenn was here, he would say "aho," which basically means is totally in agreement. Say, yeah. I mean, we talked about that here, and we live in a country. Everybody knows this, and we've talked about this a lot also, where half the population is gonna love these stories. The other half is gonna automatically call it woke because everything is woke without really knowing why or what that means. So how you kind of explained how you write these type of stories for all audiences, not like you said, not just strictly for Filipino. It is from the Filipino culture, but
so I always tell this to people, right? And I'm sorry to cut you off because this is definitely one of those things that kind of I'm very passionate about. We grew up on Norse and Greek mythology. You don't have to be Norse or Greek to love Norse or Greek mythology. So in the same way, we adjust how we talk about the characters depending on our demographic. If we're in a demographic where it's not predominantly Filipino, and let's face it, there are areas where it isn't, the question becomes, are you looking for new myths? And the answer is yes. They are looking for new myths. Everybody's looking for something new. Everybody is looking for the next big thing. And so if you can relate to people on that fundamental level, then I think it allows you to be more successful because you're not just creating something for a small minority audience. You're creating it for anybody that loves comic books, that loves supernatural elements, that loves fantasy. And it should be able to stand on those legs by itself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually where I was going, where I always describe these stories as, at the end of the day, human stories, because
Correct.
it applies to everyone, no matter what you look like, where you come from. It's lessons that you can learn from these stories that, plain and simple, teach you how to be a human.
Correct. Which is why if we get rid of all of the Philippine mythology, it's really just about a woman who finds out that she has unparalleled power after a traumatic experience. And what does she do with that?
Yeah. See, now that actually also leads perfectly into the next question I was going to ask. You more than anybody would have the best answer for this. How do you pitch these stories to major studios if you want to make it a live action show or film?
So you pitch it in two ways. The first one is you definitely pitch it as what it is. Again, right? When I talk about the film, so as you know, we've been developing the film version of Carmina, and the film version of Carmina is literally there's a young woman from a small town. The look of it feels like nomad land, but when she goes into the dream world, it turns into the fountain. But then she hears voices, and like, where are those voices coming from? And it's coming from a different culture. But I think now, especially in the world of sci-fi and fantasy, I mean, how can you be okay with creating the Jedi or the Na'vi language but not actually hear of a character or a language that does exist? And plus, when you think about it from this perspective, you can talk about it from a genre perspective. It's the film itself is a supernatural drama, right?
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, you also have to consider from an economical perspective, Asia is the next big marketplace. Like, it's a matter of fact, like the streaming services have already met their quota in North America, and their next point of view on their next growing and emerging market is Southeast Asia. So we're saying, well, on the flip side, as you've seen, what was the biggest animated film on Netflix ever? I'm asking you.
What was it? I don't know.
K-pop Demon Hunters is the answer.
Mm.
The biggest animated film on Netflix, which also became the biggest soundtrack on Spotify, is K-pop Demon Hunters, and that is what? Based on Korean culture, right?
Yeah.
So that just tells you there is a need and a want for stories that transcend just your typical expectations, because otherwise, like, the audiences are speaking right now. They're supporting things that are outside of the norm.
Yeah.
Whereas, you're seeing certain films kind of like fall to the wayside.
Which, I've always said, we talk about representation here, and representation, it's not just in front of the camera. I've always said it has to be in the boardrooms, because when we start getting in there and giving the green light to these stories, that's when you have true representation, which it sounds like what you're saying, because you can explain it the way you did, but there's still going to be some people that are like, well, I don't really.
Oh, I
get
agree.
it.
I definitely agree with you. Like, some people are just not going to get it until the hats change, like, within our infrastructure, and our goal is to be able to be a part of that. Obviously, as you've known, in parallel to Diwata Comics, in parallel to what I do, that's the reason why even in my own career, I'm still growing. Like, I started as an artist, I became a supervisor, I became a lead, I became a department head, and now I'm on an executive level. And the reason I still continue doing that is because I tell people, yeah, here's my IP, here's the credibility that I take to my daily work. So what I bring to my IP is the credibility I do on my daily work on some of the biggest shows on the planet.
Yeah. Now that we talked about Carmina a little bit, I remember now you started to tell me about the new icons, but then, like always happens at Comic-Con, something or someone came up, we were interrupted, so you didn't get back to it. So what is the new icons? What is that?
So new icons is an interesting one, because on one part, if I was talking to a standard person, I would say New Icons is a reboot to the Diwata Comics universe, where we're introducing 10 new characters from different walks of life that can be characters in their own right. But really, the truth of it is, from a community perspective, it is the first Filipino-American comics anthology. Let's start it off with, we are an emerging market. We are one of the largest growing AAPI populations in the United States. That is matter of fact. So therefore, just as there is, a market for the Latino community, there is a market obviously for the Japanese animes and the Korean material. I would say we are an emerging market, and here's 10 characters from different points of view. And once again, you don't have to come from this background to enjoy these stories, because these are different thematic elements. They just happen to have some remnants of a culture that is inside these stories. But on its own, they're unique takes of unique tales from 10 people from a Filipino-American background telling their stories based on lived-in experiences.
Is New Icons coming out this year, or when is that going to be released?
So New Icons, we actually announced it to a panel that, by the way, I'm very proud to share this. It was a packed panel, but we didn't even advertise it. And not because we didn't want to, we just ran out of time. It was a panel that we didn't advertise, and we got there and we were surprised to a full room and a full hour of signings right after that. And that just tells you there is an audience that is craving this material. And we did announce New Icons comes out this October.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about that. That's something that I love. I've always loved about Comic-Con. That is definitely a place where you don't have to find the audience. The audience will find you, as you guys found out.
Correct.
Yeah. So as far as Diwata Comics, what should we look for, if you can talk about it in the near future, besides the New Icons?
I mean, that's a lot to unpack, because New Icons is literally introducing you to 10 new characters with 10 new worlds. I would say for now, New Icons would be the next thing to look out for, but within New Icons is the individual titles, 10 new individual titles that we are looking to bring out to the public that expands on our current slate of comics.
Okay, and let everybody know the website, social media, where they can follow everything that you guys got going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find us at diwatacomics.com. That's DIWATAKOMIKS.com. Once again, because that's not an easy one, DIWATAKOMIKS.com. And you can also find us on socials at Diwata Comics.
Yeah, to make it easy for everybody, like always, I'll just link it on the show description. Click on Mark's name, and it will take you right there. You are welcome. You don't have to search. So, Mark, thanks a lot for coming on. Wish you the best, and you're welcome back on the show anytime.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Henry. Such a pleasure, and looking forward to being back.
The Geek Speak show will continue after these messages.
In case you missed it, the Geek Speak Expo has been rescheduled to the fall of 2026. That means that the search for speakers and panelists is once again on. If you have an idea for a panel, you now have an opportunity to pitch it to us to be included next year. The Geek Speak Expo is an all-ages event, so keep it all ages appropriate. You know what that means. If you have to ask if something is appropriate, let me answer it right here. No, it isn't. We are hoping to feature panels highlighting independent films and filmmakers, books including comics and graphic novels, cosplay, gaming, video, RPG, and card games, and anything else that would interest a geek audience. Visit thegeekspeakshow.com for more info and to submit a panel for next year's Geek Speak Expo.
Let me assume for a few seconds. Because the Halloween episode has always been the most downloaded episode in the show's history, I'm assuming you all enjoy getting scared. I'm assuming that's because you've had an experience that you just can't explain. Disembodied voices, shadows out of the corner of your vision, unexplained sounds when you're home alone. On this year's Halloween episode, Henry and Sean Clenn want to try something new. They want to hear your experiences and share them on the Halloween episode. You can record your experience and send it as an MP3 file to geek.speak@gmx.com. If you'd rather not record yourself, but you still want to share your story, write it out in an email and Henry or Sean Clenn will read it back on the Halloween episode. However you send it, make sure to put Halloween story in the subject line and send it to geek.speak@gmx.com. This will be an interesting and spooky Halloween episode.
This is the Geek Speak Show Book Club. In here, you'll find books new and old, comic books, graphic novels, anything you can read which will interest you if you like this show. Welcome to the Geek Speak Show Book Club.
And this week's selection is a comic book titled Calico. It's published by Sigma Comics, and joining me to tell us about Calico and Sigma Comics is the founder of the company, H.H. German. Welcome, H.H. How are you?
How you doing, Henry?
Doing fantastic. So before we get to Calico, tell me the story of Sigma Comics. How did the company come to be?
Well, it was born out of the quarantines we had out of the pandemic. And I was dating this young lady, and she got a book deal, one of the big name publishers. And we celebrated in the park. She says, hey, now it's your turn. Why don't you get one of your ideas off the shelf? That idea you had about the animal lover. Of course, she's talking about a novel that I was working on, or that I had thought about. And I took her up on it. I took the idea off the shelf, and I started writing an outline for this novel. And as I wrote the outline, it became clear to me that the protagonist and the story itself lent itself better as a graphic novel or comic book series. And that's exactly what I did. I started writing it as a comic book series, and all of a sudden we have Sigma Comics.
Yeah, see, I love that because it's another story. We talked about the pandemic and everything in 2020 here on the show, and I always, in everything that I do, I always try to find the positive. It was, as you remember, as everybody remembers, it was pretty hard to find anything positive back then in 2020. But one of the positives, and you're an example of that, while we were locked down and we had a lot of time, people had a lot of time to come up with new ideas. You obviously came up with a big one, turned out to be Sigma Comics, so love hearing that story. And were you a comic book reader before that, or was that your first intro into, like, hey, let me just do a comic book? When did you get introduced to comic books?
Well, I'll follow up on what you said after I answer your question. So yeah, I read comics as a kid. In fact, comics is part of my American story. I was born here in America, in New York, but my family came over in the 60s, and I didn't learn English till I was about 5 because part of my upbringing, was going back and forth to the Dominican Republic, because both my parents worked in the New York City hospital system, which meant 12, 16-hour days sometimes. So I couldn't be left alone. So first language was Spanish, and Sesame Street and comic books. That's how I learned English, frankly. And so that answers that. I stopped reading comics around, by the time I went to college. But yes, I always read comics since I was a kid into high school. And but just as a follow-up to what you were talking about the negative and overcoming into a positive, turning a negative into a positive. The story and part of Sigma Comics was, the character Calico, Hector Gill, is sort of based on me and my story. I was a former professional fighter, and I never won a championship. Even though I was a good fighter, I was always a contender. I'm never a champion. So I always had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder there. And I'm a single guy, and I'm not a young guy, which means that I never met. Well, I did meet the woman I wanted to marry, but she didn't want me. So I lost the girl. I lost the big fight. So already you got 2 swings and a miss, right? So, and that's Hector Gill. He lost the girl, he lost the fight, and he's kind of a bitter kind of guy. So the story itself is, how do you take loss and turn it into a positive? Here comes Calico.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm smiling at you. I don't know if you heard me laugh there when you were telling that story. I'm not laughing at you, HH, but I'm laughing at the fact that your character sounds a lot like Peter Parker. That's one of the reasons why I've always loved Peter. I like Spider-Man, but I've always loved Peter Parker and identifying with him because, like you, like most of us are the same way. We don't win, we don't get the girl, we don't get the job, whatever it is, and the guest that we had on a few minutes ago, that's actually what we were talking about, is bringing stories from other cultures and how do you present them for everyone, for all the audience, not just for, in his case, it was the Filipino culture. But for you, you could have specifically made it for the Dominican audience, but not everybody can identify with this all over the world. Everybody wins and loses all over the world. So I love that about Calico. Hearing that, were there any specific comic books that are characters that inspired you to create Calico when you were growing up?
You ask great questions, Henry.
Thanks.
Well, you mentioned Peter Parker. He was my favorite of all time. Spider-Man was my favorite comic book, and I read that one as a kid into my teens.
See, wait, let me interrupt you. I gotta say this. I think we didn't get a chance. We met at Comic-Con a couple of weeks ago.
Sure.
Everybody knows how crazy Comic-Con is, so we didn't really get a chance to really get to talk a lot because a lot of stuff was going on.
Sure.
But there was something about you that I said, you know what, I need to talk more to this guy. So I will have you on the show now. Now that I'm hearing your story more, there's a lot of similarities. So that I think that's why I love the story, and I love hearing your story.
Well, I love to hear it, brother. It's the human experience is an interesting thing. We don't really talk about it, but I think a lot of us have vibes, energies that we're carrying around, and sometimes with certain energies meet, there's this unconscious or subconscious understanding that a little more time needs to be lent and spent, with the other person. So this is it, and you were prudent enough to sense that, and thank you for doing it. The other character is the Punisher, and the Punisher is someone who I gravitated towards in my teens, and I really, really love the way Mike Baron wrote the Punisher. Mike Baron and Klaus Janson teamed up for the Punisher ongoing series #1 in 1987, after I believe it was Steve Grant and Mike Zeck had the title, the miniseries, and all this, by the way, is all under Carl Potts, Marvel Comics editor, and the Mike Baron Klaus Janson combo, that really was like an eye opener. And I read that title, for years, and it was really the one that took the most inspiration. That I think I took the most inspiration from for the Calico character, Hector Gill. He's someone who goes after people who abuse animals, and he takes care of them permanently. So definitely a very Punisher-esque way of dealing with the malady.
Yeah. You mentioned that at Comic-Con, you were telling me about the book, and by the way, you gave me the copy of the book, and reading it, yeah, I can see the influence from Punisher. Now, before I go on, I've got to ask, now that we know, first let me ask two questions. One is, there's been a few different versions of the Punisher in live action TV shows and films. To you, which is the better, or is John Bernthal perfect?
I think Bernthal is a great Punisher. I don't think he's perfect. I think he's too emotive. The Punisher, as written, is not anywhere near as emotive as Bernthal, and I think it's credit to him as an actor.
Yeah,
I think as an actor, you want to emote as much as you can to really give the character some texture and bring him true to life. The problem with that is that Frank Castle is just simply nowhere near as emotive as John Bernthal, how he plays him. I think the best one of all the ones that have played him live action was Thomas Jane.
Yeah.
Say what you will about the story, about the character, whatever. He's the one, in terms of his demeanor, a very sort of stoic, very serious, and foreboding, very brooding Punisher. That's the Punisher right there. He's a very silent, quiet type of guy who isn't really bothered with what's happening around him, and his interest is just to eliminate the bad guy. Yeah. He's not going to relish in it. He's not going to cry about it, get crazy or wild. He's just going to kill you, and he's going to keep going, and his war is not going to end. And that's the way the Punisher is. He's a silent killer, Rage is underneath that, but he never shows it.
See, isn't something else that you and I have in common? I know I'm different here, but and I'm not saying I don't like Bernthal. He's good as the Punisher, but I've always said Thomas Jane, even though people say, "Oh, it's just a corny movie." Yeah, maybe, but that is, like you said, that is the Punisher that I grew up reading in the comic book. So yeah, I definitely agree with you. Now, I am looking forward to seeing him. See what he's going to do with Spider-Man next year, my other favorite. So we'll see what that looks like going into next year.
Absolutely. Good stuff coming.
Yeah, but let me also ask you a question that I'm sure now that they've heard your story, a lot of listeners are probably asking, so let me ask for them. How did you go from boxer to being a student at the School of Visual Arts in New York?
Well, I grew up in the Bronx. I was a Latino kid who grew up in an Italian neighborhood in the Bronx, and this would have been in the 80s. So, I love the Italian culture. I grew up in it, and if I had a choice to do it over again, I wouldn't change a thing. But I have to be honest, it was a bumpy ride. There was some racism that I experienced, and I fought a lot. And what happens, Henry, when you grow up in a kitchen, you learn how to cook. And that's exactly what happened. I grew up in the Bronx and in a tough Italian neighborhood in the 80s. And you better believe that fighting was on the menu. And I grew up learning how to fight really well, to the point where the next step was a boxing gym. And there I honed my skills under some of the best trainers in the country, frankly. And I became a very, very good amateur boxer, to the point where I won a lot of tournaments. And unfortunately, I never won a championship. But before I did, I was invited into MMA. And MMA was a growing sport here in the 90s. And I competed in a professional MMA tournament. And that was a championship level tournament where I did unfortunately lose to a world champion. Again, I had a chance to win a championship, but I lost. I came up short, Henry.
Yeah.
And I did go to the School of Visual Arts. I was always artistic as a kid. I mentioned Sesame Street and comic books. And that certainly helps to aid the imagination. So that by the time I got out of high school, I was ready for art school. And I went to the School of Visual Arts. It was my local art school. I was very fortunate. It was one of the best ones in the country. And there I got a wonderful education in the arts. And I took a lot of creative writing classes at SVA. But ironically, my degree isn't in cartooning or storytelling. It was in advertising. So I worked as a copywriter out of school and as an art director. But because I took many, many creative writing classes, especially towards the latter end of my education there, when the time came to write the story, I was ready.
Yeah. Well, not only that, are you ready to write and create the story, but like you said, because of your degree, you also know how to sell it when you need to. So perfect.
Absolutely. I was very fortunate.
Yeah. Now you said it was a novel that you had in mind, but was
Right.
Calico the first character you thought of, or have you thought of any other different kind of characters?
When I was a kid, I'd think of characters here and there, but really the Calico is really the first character that I thought of. And I have another one that I'm working on. Actually, it's released. It's called Green Eye Bandito, and it's Hector as a child, as a boy, and as a teenager. And we have that as a manga series. So we literally just put that out. I think you can get it right now on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. I don't know if you can get it, but it's brand new. So you might get a chance to get that. Green Eye Bandito, it's called. It's Hector as a kid, as a teenager.
Okay. Well, let me have you tell his story, because the listeners can kind of figure out we've tiptoed around what Calico's story actually is. But what is his story, Calico's story?
Hector Gill is a former boxer from the Bronx who doesn't like people, but he loves animals. He gets intel on people who abuse and kill animals every day all across New York City. And every night he throws on the Calico suit and it's sayonara, baby. He makes the Punisher look like Gandhi.
Yeah, you told me that a common kind of. I like that line. Now, why? What? I mean, it's pretty obvious why, but for you specific for HH, why is animal abuse such an important topic for you that you have to cover it with your character?
It's the most important cause in my life. I love animals. Like Hector, I'm not the biggest fan of people, but I love animals. Animals are pure. They don't have anything other than what they're showing you. And to think that to think that we were concerned about bullying as kids. We were all bullied as kids, unfortunately. When you're in the schoolyard, when another kid bullies you, he's either a little taller or a little smaller than you. But when you're a little animal, like let's say you're a cat, it's like King Kong picking you up.
Yeah.
It's like a monster, a giant-esque monster picking you up and bullying you. Just imagine bullying a cat or a dog. It's disgusting. And those are the worst people, in my view, on the planet, people who could abuse innocent animals. So that was the biggest thing for me. And I was able to marry two passions, my love of animals and my love of comic books and storytelling. So that's why I did what I did.
Yeah, and you got me thinking about that. They are also the most cowardly because even, I was bullied when I've told the story many times because I like Star Wars and comics, and I was a weird kid, so I was definitely bullied because of that. Also very similar to you, English wasn't my first language either, so I would say something, the kids would laugh at me. Hey, he doesn't know how to talk. So I had to deal with that. But every now and then when you get bullied, you might get some revenge. You might, kick them, run away, or hide or something. Animals can't do that. They can't get revenge on you. So yeah, until you explain it like that. Imagine King Kong picking up a little cat, a little dog. Well, next to King Kong, any dog, no matter who you are, it's gonna look small. But yeah, right. they can't fight back. So yeah, great way to make people see what it is, what Calico really is all about. Now, right. Is it going to be an ongoing series or one shot or graphic, or what's is it a series or what is it?
It's definitely a series. We're up to issue 14 already, concluded on the last book that we put out, the trade paperback, which is called Calico Morality Play, which again, I got to say, I'm probably the luckiest guy in comics. The cover for the book was Klaus Janson, who was one half of the team that I mentioned before, from the Punisher #1. And the first writer on the book, all right, chapter 1, when you open up, the very first story is written by none other than the other half of the Punisher team, the original Punisher team, Mike Baron. So unbelievable stuff. I had Klaus Janson drawing the cover, and an amazing cover on the latest trade paperback, Calico Morality Play, and Mike Baron, the Punisher writer, with the first chapter in the book. So unbelievable stuff. We have 14 issues out. 8 of them are covered in the first trade paperback, book 1, which is called Calico Street Math. And issues 9 to 14, or, chapters 9 to 14, however you like to say it, are covered in Calico Morality Play, our second book 2.
Yeah. So, for what you just said, it would be like us working with, he's not with us anymore, with Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Like, how did you get them to work on Calico?
Unbelievable stuff. Like I said, I'm very lucky. The first person I reached out when I had the idea was Klaus Janson. And I did that because it turned out he was on my alma mater. He actually taught at the School of Visual Arts while I was there, and unbeknownst to me, I had no idea about this. So I looked at the website, SVA, back in 2020 when I was looking to form the company, Sigma Comics. And the idea was, all right, let me call the cartooning faculty and see if I can get one of the teachers to recommend one of the students that was graduating, maybe put a few bucks in their pockets so that they can come and draw my book. And it turns out Klaus Janson was there. So that interaction turned into a very long, many-year conversation and guidance on his part, and I've been fortunate to receive it. And ultimately, he agreed to do a cover, which I'm very thankful for. So then on the latter, Mike Baron, I had purchased some Badger comics. The Badger is a character that was created by Mike Baron under the recommendation of one of our customers. They said, hey, listen, you should get some Badger comics because Mike Baron wrote them, and the character is kind of similar. So that's what I did. I bought some Badger comics, and Mike Baron, because I bought so many of them, reached out to me, and that turned into a wonderful relationship. I sent him my books. He loved them. And, of course, I was very ecstatic about that. And since then, he had been giving me guidance. So since about issue 5 of Here Comes Calico, Mike Barron's been giving me regular, issue to issue guidance, to the point where he wrote one of the Calico stories, and in fact he's writing some more. So I don't know how. I guess I'm the luckiest guy in comics, man.
Yeah, I mean, hearing that story, I just got to say to the listeners, I know we hear, and you guys probably hear all the time, you don't want to meet your heroes. Every now and then, I know when you say that, it means it's a bad thing, it's a bad experience. But every now and then, you can experience like this, like what H went through. And I've had a lot of those where I've met my heroes, and they did become heroes. They did become mentors, and I did end up working with them, including Stan Lee. So yeah, I love hearing those kind of stories.
Awesome.
So give everybody the website, social medias, where they can get the book, especially.
Absolutely. SigmaComics.com, SIGMA comics.com. You can get them at bookstores if they have them, because we are carried through Ingram. And that's pretty much it. Sigma Comics, your local convention. If you're going to be at a convention, comic book convention, you're very likely going to see us there, especially if it's a bigger one. We tend to do all of the bigger conventions. So we'll see you at the next convention or at SigmaComics.com.
Yeah, and I'll have everything linked up on the show description for all of you guys listening. So, H, thanks a lot. Love your story and Calico's story, and you're welcome back on the show anytime.
Thank you very much, Henry. Really appreciate it. And all yous listen, please hit like and subscribe to the Geek Speak show. This guy's got a great show. He really is a wonderful guy. And thank you, Henry, for having me on. I really appreciate you.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
If you have a favorite book, comic book, or graphic novel that you'd like to be featured on the book club, let Henry know about it. If you're an author and you'd like your book, graphic novel, or comic book and you to be featured on the book club, definitely let Henry know. Henry at thegeekspeakshow.com. The book club will be back next week, exclusively on the Geek Speak Show Volume 2.
One more thing we forgot to mention during that interview for the book club. Every time you buy any Calico comic book issues, plural, a percentage of whatever you buy, whatever you spend, a percentage of it goes to an animal shelter. Specifically, it goes to Animal Welfare Institute in New York. Or I think it's actually nationwide. But when you buy a Calico comic book, you are also becoming a hero. The dogs, the animals, they may not ever see you, but believe me, they will feel your act. So, two good things. You get a comic book, you're helping out HH produce some more of them, and more importantly, I think, you're helping animals. You're helping shelters, at least, that help abused animals. So, another reason to go get them. And again, I have the links on the show description or on the book club section on the website for everything. And that's the episode. Like I said before I go, that's what I was talking about at the beginning of the show, where you've heard them now, stories from other cultures, from other countries, original stories. And like I told Mark Nazal when he was on, there have been some people we've talked about to them here on the Geek Speak show that have given you original stories from their culture, but you all haven't shown up. So now we need to answer that question. So you're getting original stories. Why are you not showing up? You're asking for those stories. So I don't know. Sometimes you guys are it's hard to figure out. But you know what? We enjoy doing what we do. You heard it in both of the guests, and you hear it from me every week. This is what I'm talking about. This is why we do that. This is why I talk about things like this on the Geek Speak show. And so next week, I don't know exactly. Actually, I do know. One of the guests I know, speaking of, is going to be another platform for you creatives to put in whatever story you want to put. There's a different way to get the stories out there. We've talked about what type of stories this week. Next week, we talk about how to get them out there and some other surprises. And of course, Sean Clan. So Sean Clan and I will be back next week to speak more geek. And oh, by the way, if you like this episode, you like what I was talking about, and you think you can do some geek speak, we are looking for a new co-host. I am for sure. geek.speak@gmx.com. geek.speak@gmx.com and put new co-host in the subject line and let me know, hey, that was a pretty good episode. I want to be on episodes like that, and we'll have you be a part of this. hopefully before fall. So geek.speak@gmx.com if you want to be the new co-host on the Geek Speak Show. But for now, like I said, next week, Sean Glenn and I will be back to speak more geek. We'll talk to you then.
While you wait for next week's episode, you can visit the show online at thegeekspeakshow.com. There, you'll find links for the guests, info about Henry and Sean Glenn, and links to all of the show's social media. Tell your friends that there's a show out there that doesn't hate everything and still finds the fun in anything that we read, watch, or experience. Henry and Sean Glenn will be back next week. But if they're not back by dawn...
Okay, you people sit tight, hold the fort, and keep the home fires burning. If we're not back by dawn, call the president.
The Geek Speak Show, Volume 2 was produced and distributed by 22 Creations Multimedia, LLC.